Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
I'm just going to say it. If you don't like movies, you're probably in the wrong place right now. But if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. Please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Give us the old 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're pretty much everywhere. Over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, do not hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, we're on the Twitter, we're on the Instagram, we're on the TikTok, and we're on the Letterboxd for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, guess what? We love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us the kindness and pay us a visit. On this episode, oh my goodness, we got a fun one. It is a movie that came out last week, but as always, we are scrambling from behind in the never-ending onslaught of content creation that we live in. But we're talking about a movie called, well, I Like Movies. And it's such an adorable affair. I mean, it's one of those movies that harkens back to the joy of the video store with Blockbuster and running down on a Friday night and picking up a few videos. And it centers around a socially inept 17-year-old cinephile named Lawrence, who gets a job at a video store where he forms a complicated friendship with his older female manager. It is smart, it is intelligent, it is funny as hell, and if you're a movie nerd, it is very, very relatable, which is why it was written and directed by another movie nerd, still a journalist, former journalist, but now writer-director of this fantastic film called Chandler Levack, and we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with her to talk about the origins of the story, what made her want to make the film, and so very much more as we, wax nostalgia for the old days of Blockbuster. And, I'll trade a couple of horror stories from screenings. I think Angry Birds got mentioned, but again, it was a fun talk we had with Chandler, and it's a fun movie. If you're in the Toronto area, I know it is playing at the Cinephile Lightbox, and Chandler is coming down for Q&A. She was around last weekend, and I think she is back in town this weekend to do it again. So please get your butt down to the Cinephile Lightbox to watch I Like Movies. But first, please enjoy our talk with Chandler, because between you and me, it is a darn good one. But I mean, just to kick it off officially, I mean, obviously, thank you so much for the time today. I mean, and congratulations on the film.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that so much.
No, I mean, I gotta ask, because I mean, I've known my fair share of Lawrences. I've worked with my fair share of like, what was the inspiration, not just for this story, but I mean, for this character who was, on one end, I wanted to smack the shit out of him, but on the other end, he was so kind of lovable and redeemable at the same time.
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, thank you so much. I feel like that's his journey as a person. The inspiration, I don't know, I think it was, partially basing in a lot of my high school self. I was like a teen employee of Blockbuster Video in Burlington, Ontario. Obsessed with, cinema at the time. And then, I don't know, there was something about the way I wrote it. I felt like I was almost like taking dictation, and like Lawrence just took over. I don't know what like dark part of my psyche he came from, but I remember just writing the script, and he would say like the most insufferable, obnoxious things. And I'd be like, oh my God, Lawrence, you're really a lot today. I felt like he just was born, and then I just kind of, I don't know.
Well, and I mean, it's such a fascinating character study. I mean, not just with him and his friends, but I mean, once he gets into the store, and I mean, the dynamic between him and Alana, like, to me, was probably the most, like,
fascinating, like psychologically fascinating sort of relationship of the story. I mean, like, talk to me a little bit just about sort of these linchpins that you needed to put into Lawrence's life to really sort of get him around to the track that I think we all wanted him to be on by the end of this.
Yeah, well, I think, if you're like a person that's like maybe never felt like really heard and you have a lot of anxiety and stuff, it feels like it's hard to like realize that other people have like interior lives. And I think that's kind of his big journey, is to kind of realize that like everybody's in their own movie. Like, you're not the star of your own movie. Like, everyone, like I'm in your movie right now, you're in mine.
Right.
And so, yeah. And then I think, I really wanted him to have this like real confrontation with like an older woman, and but not in a way that's like Licorice Pizza where they're going to end up together at the end, but like actually have this person that's like, I've been terrorized by people like you and I'm still kind of recovering from that trauma, and there's like a weird dark part of myself that actually seeks your approval and I don't know why. Like, I still feel like I'm trying to unpack, how much of my like cultural, education as like not only someone studying film in film school, but also like working as a really young journalist, like being almost exclusively mentored by older men, has like formed some weird part of my life, and how much I'm like, not only like is my whole cultural taste based on like the art that was made by men, but also just like, I feel like, yeah, I'm trying to understand how to separate myself from that, I guess, as somebody who wants to make work about my own experiences.
Well, and I mean, there's something about, just at least for me, when they have their big blow up, and I mean, sort of calling him a sociopath, because I mean, in movies of similar veins, it's danced around the word. Like, how important was it for you to go like, nope, you're a sociopath? No, this is what this is.
She calls him a narcissist, not a sociopath.
That's right. It was a narcissist. Sorry.
Which is
But
a little
same
bit
idea, though. I
mean, I don't think he is a sociopath. Yeah, he's definitely just more of a narcissist, which is, I guess, a gentler way of thinking about that. Yeah, I mean, I think at that point, so much of that explosion is also just about her. Like, she's saying things that she probably feels about herself too, like she's really probably projecting a lot of like pain onto him and stuff too. And she doesn't have the wherewithal to know that she's saying this to like a 17-year-old boy also, who's not really a fair target for her like ire. Like, I think Alana has a lot of work to do on herself as well. So I don't know. I think a lot of the film is like me taking my 16-year-old self and my like, 35-year-old self and sort of having this like direct encounter between, these two really like formative phases of my life. So maybe I'm secretly worried that I'm a narcissist too. Wouldn't be the first time
aren't we all a little bit?
I mean, honestly. Yeah.
No, I mean, I've got to ask, like, talk to me a little bit just about, casting, finding Isaiah, and I mean, obviously finding Romina to play Alana, and I mean, even Krista as his mom, because I mean, you've got to, obviously in a piece like this, I mean, if people aren't in tune with the material before you turn the camera on, it's not going to work.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I feel like I lucked out with this like incredible ensemble of actors, like, even Andy and Alex who play Shannon and Brendan in the video store, I think are like magnificent. And there's so many small roles that people just absolutely kill it, like Dan Byrne in that interview scene. I worked with a really amazing casting director, Jesse Griffiths. So, I was pretty clear, I guess, I think, about the kind of type of actor I was looking for, but like over 300 actors auditioned for the role. And then he kind of called it down to like maybe 100 self-tapes that I watched. So it was very interesting for Lawrence to kind of see like 100 different versions of somebody of all different, perspectives and ages and ethnicities and stuff. So that was cool. But I think there was something about Isaiah that just instantly was like electric and heartbreaking and fascinating, and he had amazing comic timing, but he could also do these like deep wells of like sincerity or vulnerability, and then these crazy like explosions of anger and emotion and stuff. And it just felt like there was like no ceiling to like what he could do as a performer. And that's how I felt about Romina too. Like, she's just the way that she's a really brilliant, like gifted physical comedian, and so specific about her line reading, and she's so intelligent but beautiful and charismatic. And I don't know, the combination of them together, like it was just really immediately like fascinating. And then Krista also, like, I thought just elevated that role so much and brought so much of her own insight as a mother, and just like this incredible depth and vulnerability to that part that really transformed it into something that's really moving.
For sure. No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, as much as this is very much a coming of age story and just like sort of the theme they're in, this is also a love letter to the video store. And I mean, full disclosure, I mean, back in my high school years, I would hang out in my Blockbuster and convince people that, John Woo's Hard Boiled was completely in English. You're going to be fine. How much do you think we collectively miss that sort of, culture of the video store, and like how informative and important it was to film culture? Because I mean, it feels like we've kind of dismissed it.
Yeah, I feel like Netflix will never be as sort of, it can never replicate what we lost with video stores. And there was something about like the ritual of like going into Blockbuster on a Friday night when like all the new movies were getting released, and being able to walk in there and just see like 50 copies of, The Italian Job or How to Meet a Guy in 10 Days on the Shelf. And I don't know, like just I don't know, there's just something about the idea of like a film as like this kind of talismanic object that you get to hold in your hands. And I think when you rent a movie, it's sort of like you're like having ownership over a movie, like it gives you this kind of emotional relationship to a film that means that the film is important to you. You have this kind of literal, emotional, and financial obligation to actually watch it, and kind of you're the primary like custodian of it for a little bit. And now it just feels like all cinema is like entirely disposable. Like you can stream something, like the movie is worthless to you. You have no financial obligation to watch it. Probably for some films, never going to make it past the first 20 minutes. Like it just, all film kind of becomes disposable in this sad way that like, I feel like also just walking around, I would see like the covers of things and they would immediately fascinate me. Like that's how I watched Ghost World for the first time. Because I was like, what is this movie? I have to watch it, and I think you take risks on things when you're in a video store. And then, the power of like actually talking to real life humans and having them recommend movies to you, like that's something really special and sacred that we'll never get back, even with curated streaming services. Because the algorithm is just telling me to watch like Black Adam every time.
It was that weird thing because I mean I would always veer away from that one wall that had 200 copies of something and like focus on the movies that had 2 or 3 copies and be like, well, maybe let me try this.
Yeah, there's some movies too, like if I just see the DVD cover, I have like this weird like primal memory of like stacking all the like copies of Men with Brooms on the shelf.
Now, I mean, I'm curious because I mean, obviously in watching this film, I mean, I could see a lot of the influence that maybe you pulled from it to make this film and see sort of the character traits in films that have been formative, for me and other people. But the fact that Lawrence got redeemed in such a earnest way felt very rewarding to me and very much almost Canadian. How important was it for you to not make this character unrepenting? You know what I mean? Like give him a little bit of walk him back from the cliff kind of thing. Because I mean, if you compare this to something like a Todd Solondz movie, I mean, I know he quotes Happiness all the time. I mean, Happiness is a rough movie. This is not this is an endearing movie.
Yeah, I mean, first, or like Funny Pages that came out this year, where they almost kind of like doubled down on his dickishness at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I love that movie. But I think for me, like, I don't know, the pleasure of like cinema and I guess the pleasure of the coming of age genre, which is a genre movie that I really highly like respect and treasure, like is that you do get to watch someone change and evolve over time, and they do have a really rough journey, but at the end you want this sort of glimmer of hope that they're going to be okay. And I don't think that Lawrence is going to have an easy go of it in life, and I didn't want to like sand off all his prickly awkward edges that kind of make him interesting, but I did want to show the possibility that he could be okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that's just for me, like the sort of pleasure in screenwriting and working in this genre, which I really admire and love. And I feel like I always want to make coming of age movies for the rest of my life, like even if they're also like hard sci-fi or something, which I would never know how to write something like that. But I think I think for me, I wanted to take someone that was like, you at the beginning of the movie, you're like, this guy is messed up. He's wearing a cowboy hat. He's talking too quickly about, he has like a manic. It's funny because in Quebec, our French translation of the movie is like maniac de films. Like he literally is maniacal sometimes. But, and you know, like really, really like clueless and says things that are, it was funny. Like I watched it in Santa Barbara 2 days ago, and you know, there were moments where the whole audience was like, and they were like almost like these disapproving gasps of like what a dick he is and stuff. But you know, I feel like you in the same way that you have to have empathy for like your own personal past mistakes or your own versions of yourself where you were really going through something tough and didn't have any kind of emotional clarity and maybe hurt people or did things that you really regret. Like you have to for your own personal self have some idea of a sense of redemption for yourself that you can learn and evolve and grow as a person. So why wouldn't you treat, you know, a character that you create with the same kind of self-love and awareness?
For sure. Now, I mean, I've got to ask, and this is a little bit of a selfish question, but I'm definitely curious because obviously you were the journalist, you were the critic, and you've made the transition to sort of the other side. How has the job of like being the journalist, being the critic, informed you as a filmmaker and a storyteller? Because I mean, obviously, the filmmaker and the critic have a, you know, historically complex relationship.
Yes. Well, that's a great question. Well, I think my entire life I felt like really bad imposter syndrome about making films, and sort of buried, like really harbored long repression over that desire to be that. And I think being a critic and interviewing filmmakers was like a safe space to kind of explore that desire and need to make movies, but safely, so that I didn't have to actually go through like the financial and personal risk of having to do it because I couldn't admit it for like a really long time, and I would do anything except that, you know. And then I think eventually in my early 30s, I was like, girl, you got to make a movie. Like, what are you doing? Why are you like just like reviewing Angry Birds 3 and having like existential turmoil every day? Which is not to say that I didn't like appreciate that. And I'm sure that was like a big part of my cinematic education too. But I like doubled down on this. And then I made this movie in the pandemic for like $125,000. But I think, you know, my favorite filmmaker is Cameron Crowe, and like he's the person that really made me want to be an artist. And so he was a journalist that successfully transitioned into making great coming of age movies. So I think I always had him as a role model. And when I was writing my first screenplays, I was like, oh, there's a way that being a journalist actually is great training for screenwriting and filmmaking, because you know how to like write a profile, and a profile is really just like a short snapshot with somebody, the time spent talking to them. And then you're the one who gets to go away and tell the story of somebody's life and kind of pinpoint these moments that really feel true or authentic and really like set the scene. So in a way, that's like a great training for screenwriting, because it is kind of a synonymous thing.
For sure. Now, I mean, I've got to ask, because I mean, obviously you've been through the festival run, I mean, and now it's about to be sort of released onto the world. Have you managed to keep the blinders on? Because I mean, I can imagine as the critic turned filmmaker, the last thing you want to do is read other people reviewing your own stuff. Like, have you managed to keep the blinders on?
No, I check my Letterboxd account like probably 20 times a day. I have no life. I can't. I constantly am reading reviews, but it's weird because it makes me realize that, like, you know, like, what is a film review? I guess I've become kind of existential about it, and it's kind of like, I feel like the days of like Pauline Kael reviewing like Bonnie and Clyde and like shifting the culture of like America forever with one review in the New Yorker is like gone, and now sort of like the dissemination of a movie happens online, right? And people go see it like in 50 minutes after Berlin, but like the cultural consensus of like what this movie is there, you know? So like critics don't really have the same kind of like cultural authority that they used to, right? And something like Letterboxd, where it's sort of this collective of people all logging their reviews, and then that kind of becomes like the experience of watching the movie. It's really weird. Like I'll like have a screening of a film, and then I'll go to the bathroom and I'll check the Letterboxd, and there'll be like 14 instantaneous like responses of how people felt about the movie. And that's really, really surreal. I'm very grateful and that people have been kind to the movie, because I wasn't expecting that. I was very nervous and vulnerable to like have like the direct community that I worked in, write about it. But I guess I just tried to make a movie that felt like personal and authentic to me. And so I think that's all you can really ask of someone who's made their first feature, at least.
Well, Chandler, I think you've done that and then some, because I mean, I think you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, like at least from my perspective, the job of the critic is I mean, it's that sort of incremental aggregate. Like, I mean, if I can help push it, a millimeter in the direction I want to, that's basically the best job satisfaction I can get. But I mean, hopefully, I think collectively the universe has done that with this film. But I think you and I may have been at the same Angry Birds screening, and we will save that conversation for another day for sure.
Did you see a woman leave with 3 kids on a leash? Because I saw that and it has haunted me to this day. You did? Oh my God.
That was, that's not something I'm getting out of my brain anytime soon, but
yeah.
But you know what, honestly, and just keep up the good work. And I mean, I can't wait for the next one, but seriously, like I really had so much fun with this film.
Thank you. Well, if you want any harsh burns about me for your next movie, if you don't like my next one, you could be like, I used to like movies. I don't know. I'm already thinking of like,
right? Yeah, we're gonna load them up for sure.
I've got like if I was gonna, I already have ways to like self burn on my next film based on I'm setting myself up too much. Anyways,
you're gonna preemptively burn yourself. No,
yeah,
I totally understand.
But thank you so much for your support of the movie, and it's really exciting that I connected with you, and I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks again, Chandler. See you soon.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
Bye.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.